Rananim, and welcome to Cobbs Corner, Talk Time with Morgan Cobbs. I'm your host, Morgan Cobbs. To my listeners here in Micronesia and Asia, Australia, good morning. To my listeners back in the United States, good afternoon, good evening. I realize it's about 6 o'clock Saturday night back in East Coast. So, hello everyone. And so yeah, we're gonna get into it. Got a lot to talk about. First off, I successfully completed my very first week as a teacher. I've officially been teaching for 1 week here at Xavier High School in Micronesia. Definitely check out Xavier High School, the website. It's a Catholic Jesuit school, which I've talked about in previous episodes. It's been fun teaching Algebra 2. Algebra 2, there's a textbook, so I can kind of follow the tech. I can kind of follow along with the textbook, sort of. And kind of pace myself as a teacher. I can pace myself through the coursework and the homework assignments and everything. I'm able to sort of do that, with the other class that I teach is computer skills, but I'm teaching it to freshmen. I teach them to a bunch of freshmen, so and for that course, there's no official textbook. What's also been a bit of an adjustment is the fact that I'm a product of the American public school system. I never went to private school, never went to Catholic school, never went to a Jesuit school ever. I went to public school my whole life, magnet school. And when I was in high school, we had block scheduling, and I kind of want to hear from, listeners. I mean, we're live right now on YouTube, so feel free to, comment down below in the chat. What was your scheduling like when you were in school? For me, when I was in high school, we had block scheduling. We had A days and B days. You only had 4 periods a day. You had classes 1 through 4 on A day. You had classes 5 through 8 on B days. The only downside to that was that, now this is not really a factor on this side of the planet, but at least back home in Connecticut, the roadblock we would always run into was there was usually snow days. There's usually a bunch of snow days around like January, February, March. I'm sure some of us who, like myself, who are from Connecticut and have lived there our whole lives remember Blizzard Nemo. Blizzard Nemo 2013. I was in 7th grade. We ended up not having school for a week, and then they had to take away what would have been our February break. So, and then the rule in New Haven was every snow day that you miss, that adds a day to the end of the year, because we have to complete 180 days of school. So if Monday was an A day, but then Tuesday was a B day, Tuesday was supposed to be a B day, but it was a snow day, Wednesday still an A day. Wednesday is still an A day, and we don't get that. We don't get that day back. So that was what kind of threw us off in terms of scheduling, in terms of covering content and having tests and quizzes. It's like snow day. That just throws everybody off, and we don't get that day back. So yeah, I think that's the only downside to having block scheduling and not having every class every day. That's not the case here. And I think that the schedule that we have is kind of similar to most Catholic schools. we have days like A through F. We have days A through F, and then we have days G and H, which are block scheduling. Now, apparently, I was telling everybody, like, we were in class for 90 minutes when I was in high school. It's like when I was in high school, I had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to catch the bus because I didn't go to school in the same town that I lived in. Like, I had to wake up early, before the sun. I was up before the sun. Some mornings getting on the bus while the sun is still down. Getting on the bus at like 6 a.m., 6:15, riding the bus for an hour, to get to, let's see, from Naugatuck first Naugatuck to Hamden, because we were in Hamden when I started high school. We were still in Hamden. And then my junior year, we moved to our permanent building in West Haven. So it was about 2 hours round trip. Like round trip, it's about 2 hours total on the bus. And then we had block scheduling, as I mentioned, but we had each class for 90 minutes. Like, we had each class for an hour and a half. School day was 6 hours, 7:30 till 2, I think. Yeah, it was like 7:30 to 2. Those were the school hours. And you had 4 class periods in addition to lunch. Four class periods, 4 90-minute periods. But we were never like bored or anything for those 90 minutes. Those 90 minutes were always full. And I guess that's from the student's perspective of sitting through a 90-minute lecture, where the teacher's pretty much prepared a 90-minute lecture, and you're constantly, taking notes and doing examples and, filling up that hour and a half block. But I guess now that I'm a teacher, and I'm like one of the newest teachers, this is my very first time teaching. Now that I'm on the other side, now that I'm a teacher, I guess everybody was shocked to find out that we had 90-minute classes when I was in high school, because the regular classes, like on regular school days, class periods are only 50 minutes. They have 50-minute, the kids here have 50-minute periods. And then on days G and H, the block scheduling periods, they have 70-minute periods. And even that's considered long for these. But anybody who goes to a Catholic school, Jesuit school, let me know. Like, is your schedule similar? Do you have like days A through F, or anybody who goes to public school? There might be some public schools that use the same scheduling format, but let me know. And so, yeah, that was my first year, my first week teaching here in Micronesia. I'll have a lot more to say after my first year. Okay. 1 week down, infinity more to go. And so, yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. It's been a learning experience. Tomorrow we start week 2. I'm much more prepared. Now I have something to compare myself to. And I can compare myself to the teaching that I was doing my first week. It's like now I have sort of that baseline to grow from. It's a learning experience, growth, learning, growing physically, mentally, intellectually, spiritually, becoming the best version of yourself. That is the goal of Cobbs Corner, all right? Making you the best version of you, so that you can create your own legacy, not anyone else's. I don't know what point I just made, and that has nothing to do with TV, film, or pop culture. But I just needed to waste the first 10 minutes of this podcast letting you guys know about that. So, moving right along, in the world of TV, film, and pop culture, Star Wars is back. Star Wars is back, ladies and gentlemen. Star Wars is back, and I gotta say, the Ahsoka series looks very promising. Looks very promising. First, I would like to extend an apology. All right, to Michael from Star Wars, and to all of the Star Wars fans who listen to this podcast and any of the other podcasts that I've been on. Comic Boys, Lights, Camera, Rant. Earlier this year, I said that I would watch all of Star Wars Rebels, all 4 seasons of Star Wars Rebels, before watching Ahsoka. And I did not. Okay. Y'all have to understand, there's a ton of content out there. I think I've even brought this up on Comic Boys. There's too much content out there in the world. Stuff to be streamed, watched in theaters, and so. I know before I left the States, I made it up to about the middle of season 2. And the thing is, like, I guess for my generation, for Gen Z, like, our Star Wars was Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which aired, I think, 2008 to 2014, I think. The initial run. Yeah, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, along with Star Wars Rebels, which aired, I think it was 2014 to 2017. It definitely started in 2014. The same year Clone Wars ended. That fall, Rebels started. I remember because I was like super excited to watch Rebels. I was going into high school at the time, actually. I was going into the 9th grade, fall 2014. So I definitely remember that. And I remember watching the first season of Rebels in real time. Like, I watched the first season of Rebels in real time, maybe into season 2, a bit of season 2, but then I kind of just fell off. I don't think I've ever made it to season 3. I know there's like a ton of like lore that's explored in Ahsoka as well. But with Sabine and the Mandalorians and the House of Ren, and because I know, gosh, what is her name? Bo-Katan Kryze. She shows up, same actress, in Clone Wars, Rebels, and The Mandalorian. So I know at some point. So yes, I promise at some point I will go and finish watching Rebels. All right. To my listeners who remember me promising that I would watch all of Rebels before Ahsoka, I did not. But at some point I will finish watching Rebels, and then I probably have to rewatch the Ahsoka miniseries. Nevertheless, I did watch Ahsoka Parts 1 and 2. All right, new episodes Tuesdays, I think. Yep, either Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on where you're located. Because we're a day ahead out here, so it might be Wednesday for us. Anyway, Ahsoka Parts 1 and 2. Very, very solid cast. All right. Rosario Dawson shows up as Ahsoka Tano, and they've kind of been teasing us with they've kind of been teasing the Ahsoka series ever since I think it was season 2 of The Mandalorian. That was when Ahsoka showed up for the first time. And then she asked, like, where's Grand Admiral Thrawn? So we are going to see Thrawn. Thrawn, who will be played by Lars Mikkelsen. Lars Mikkelsen is the brother of Mads Mikkelsen. Mads Mikkelsen, who was in Rogue One. So starting to see some, off-screen families of Star Wars forming. apparently Ezra like went missing at the end of Rebels. So we're going to see Ezra again. Ezra will be played by Imam Esfandi, as Ezra Bridger. Ezra who had become a Jedi. Ezra who had become a Jedi and sort of, went missing at the end of Rebels. So there's that. Natasha Liu Bordizzo as Sabine Wren. Seeing Sabine Wren in live action, really this show, an argument could be made that this show could have been called Rebels Season 5 in live action. I mean, it was really a stretch. It was really a conscious choice for them to call it Ahsoka, because we do see a lot of the characters from Rebels in live action for the first time. Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Hera Syndulla. We see, first two episodes, yeah. We see Hera, we see Sabine. We do not see Ezra. Well, we see a hologram of Ezra Bridger in, I think, like the first or second episode. Mon Mothma, David Tennant as He Yang. Yep, David Tennant as He Yang, the robot assistant. For those of you who have watched Doctor Who, I know I made it to season 2. I know he was the 10th Doctor, David Tennant. So he's in this show. So it's a pretty solid cast. Diane Lee Inosanto as Morgan Elsbeth. All right, that character's got an amazing name. Okay, she's kind of a villain, I'll admit, but hands down, she's now my favorite Star Wars villain. The late Ray Stevenson as Balin, and Ivana Sakno as Shin. Balin and Shin were, in Norse mythology, if I'm not mistaken, they're the children of the giant wolf. Yeah, there's something about like them and Ragnarok, and so those are names taken from Norse mythology. Ray Stevenson, God rest his soul, he was very underutilized by Marvel Studios. I think he was the voice of a character on either Clone Wars or Rebels. Very underutilized. He was one of the Warriors 3. And he's a very talented actor, and this is to be his final performance before he passed away. So I'm interested to see where they go with his characters, and apparently there's a new galaxy and a new unknown galaxy in Star Wars outside of the main galaxy that all of our stories have been told in. There's another galaxy. That may not be so far away. Huh? Yeah. Well, shout out to Screen Crush, Ryan Airy, for doing his, in-depth breakdown of very, very in-depth breakdown of Ahsoka Parts 1 and 2. Go check those videos out. Screen Crush, check out New Rock Stars, Eric Voss, and I've talked about them on previous episodes. Can't wait to do an episode with you guys, Ryan Airy, Eric Voss, Tommy Bechtold, the whole gang. But would I recommend watching Ahsoka? Of course. And I've been sort of like rewatching on my own, doing like a full rewatch of all of the Star Wars movies, like every Star Wars movie from the order of release. So original trilogy first, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Then the prequels, Phantom Menace, which actually turns 25 next year. Return of the Jedi turned 40 this year, was put back in theaters. I'm hoping that they do the same thing for Phantom Menace next year when it turns 25. So Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith is legal now. Revenge of the Sith turned 18 this year. I remember seeing Revenge of the Sith in theaters when I was 4. Um, and then after that, I plan on watching, well, the sequel trilogy, but also the 2 like Star Wars stories. So, Force Awakens, Rogue One, a Star Wars story, Last Jedi, Solo, a Star Wars story, and then The Rise of Skywalker. So, got my work cut out for me, but I do plan on watching those, all of the Star Wars movies. So, I mean, I think that the Star Wars series on Disney Plus have actually been pretty good. Some were better than others. I liked the Mandalorian. I like where they're going with it. I like seasons 2 and 3. I liked like when they brought in Bo-Katan, and it's nice to see characters from other like Star Wars shows and movies kind of coming into the new Star Wars, coming into like the next generation of Star Wars. It's like again, I mean, I don't consider the Star Wars prequels to be really like my generation's Star Wars, not really Gen Z Star Wars. I mean, I wasn't alive for Phantom Menace, and I was 1 year old when Attack of the Clones came out. um, and again, I saw Revenge of the Sith when I was 4 in theaters. So really, like the Star Wars that I really remember is again Clone Wars, Rebels, Force Awakens. The newer Star Wars, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett. I actually like Book of Boba Fett a lot. A lot of folks kept sleeping on that show, saying like, "Oh, it's boring. It's too slow. It's too much exposition." I like the exposition. I like the flashback sequences. Okay, I liked Book of Boba Fett. I loved Obi-Wan Kenobi. Just seeing Ewan McGregor come back, seeing young Luke and everyone. Loved seeing Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Andor. Yep, and Andor. We're supposed to be getting Andor season 2 at some point. So, and I guess I kind of see like they're kind of doing with Andor what they did with what George Lucas did with Obi-Wan Kenobi way back in like the first Star Wars movie, introducing like in A New Hope, we're introduced to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he also dies, and he gets killed in that same movie. Of course, he shows up as a Force ghost, and then we see him in the prequels, but he's played by Ewan McGregor and not Sir Alec Guinness. And the prequels, Ewan McGregor, and then again in Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I like how they're starting to really, like with Ahsoka, bridge that gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, because canonically there's about a 30-year gap in the Star Wars canon, in the Star Wars timeline. Canonically there's about 30 years. Well, I want to say it's more than 30 years, around 30-ish years between episode 6 and 7. So with Ahsoka, we're starting to see like what is the new central government like? What is this very fragile piece that we see a bit of it in The Mandalorian, about how the Battle of Endor happened. The Empire was all but defeated. There were some small skirmishes after that, and really it was the Battle of Jakku. Like we saw in Force Awakens how Rey lived on Jakku, and canonically the Battle of Jakku, which we have never seen depicted on screen. I think it might have shown up in one of the Star Wars video games. Battle of Jakku, that's the very, very last offensive for the Empire. And after the Battle of Jakku, that planet became a graveyard of ships. Graveyard of Ships, I think that's the name of one of the levels in Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens. But now But Mandalorian was really just on the outskirts of the galaxy, and we see how a lot of territories, a lot of a lot of territories, Tatooine in particular, just fell into the hands of the Hutts and various, warlords and crime syndicates. There was not as quick of like a change of leadership. You go from one oppressive regime to there being sort of no real like regime, no real like change in power, no real like peaceful transfer of power. It's like, winning the war, like that was the easy part. But like, okay, how do we establish a new government? How do we democratize? And we realize in Ahsoka that there are some other small factions that are still loyal to the Empire, even after the Civil War is over. The Civil War has been over and yet we see that there are still some factions that are loyal to the Empire. I'm just now realizing that I forgot to specify spoilers, which, I mean, if you've made it this far into the episode, then you know that there's spoilers for Ahsoka Parts 1 and 2. My bad, guys. I was supposed to, say like this episode contains spoilers for all Disney Plus Star Wars content. All right, if you haven't watched all of Mandalorian, Boba Fett, if you haven't watched Ahsoka Parts 1 and 2, log off right now. You've been warned. 3, 2, 1. So then Luke Skywalker showed up, and it was like actual Mark Hamill. He was like old man Skywalker, and like it was like kidding, guys. And Aquaman showed up for some reason. They just like jumped like from one universe to the next, and like okay. What was I? Yeah, in Ahsoka we see that there's some factions of the quote New Republic. Like there's a New Republic now. Yeah, there's a New Republic out there, and there are some factions, some members of the quote unquote New Republic that are really loyal to the Empire. Or one of the guys says, "I'm loyal to my investors," and really, and this was alluded to in The Last Jedi, probably the most divisive Star Wars movie out there. Whole nother conversation. In The Last Jedi, it's alluded that war is the biggest industry in the galaxy. Biggest industry is war profiteering, let's not forget, there were, going back to the Clone Wars, even the Galactic Civil War, there were, smugglers and, mercenaries and bounty hunters on both sides. Bounty hunters and crime syndicates, they were kind of the neutral third party in Star Wars. Have been the neutral party, although there were times where like the Hutts had sided with the Republic, and other times they worked with the Separatists. So they were, again, neutral third party that had from time to time worked for either side during a conflict. And at least in the last Jedi, we see how on Canto Bight, the casino planet, really like everyone's just making money off of the war that's happening, double dealing, dealing under the table to both the First Order, well at that time the First Order and the Resistance. So the same thing's going on in Ahsoka. There's people double dealing. There's people being loyal to their investors, loyal to their money, and not loyal to any one particular government. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to like what is the real like change in leadership like now? Like, was there an official change in leadership? What is the galaxy looking like now? What is the government like? Is there a government? Is there a centralized government? And if there is a centralized government, is it a strong central government? Yeah. So, all things to look forward to in Ahsoka, episode 3 and beyond. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of Ahsoka. I loved it. I think this is set to continue to expand the Star Wars universe. Excuse me. Expand the Star Wars universe. I predict that Ahsoka, well, okay. I don't think it's going to be the best Star Wars out there. I guess seniority bias. I think that The Mandalorian is still the best Star Wars live action show out there. Best Star Wars show on Disney Plus, The Mandalorian. And like I said, seniority bias. I mean, it's the oldest show. Like, it was like the flagship series for Disney Plus. That and Clone Wars Season 7. But I think Ahsoka's going to be good. I got faith. It looks pretty promising. Got some solid acting. Characters that we already know and love. Characters that we're already that we know and love and that we're invested in. So highly, highly, highly recommend that you guys go and watch Ahsoka. Moving right along. I still have not been able to successfully get Paramount Plus out here in Micronesia. Something about, I don't know, NordVPN and Paramount Plus. It's like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, although most of the time it doesn't work. But to all the 90s kids watching, all right, to all the 90s kids, to, Nerd Dose, Star Wars, Lights, Camera, Rant. I realize technically I'm not the baby of the group. Technically that's Khalil. Technically Comic Boys. Technically he's the youngest. All right. But I'm a 2000s kid. Okay, so I was not alive when the first Good Burger came out. First Good Burger movie came out in the 90s. Now I have to look this up. 1997. Yep, that's exactly the year I was thinking. 1997. It is on Paramount Plus. It's also on Pluto TV and Sling TV for free. I was not alive when that movie came out. I've seen it, and I think it's a very, very hilarious movie. It's looking back, I realize it's kind of a product of its time. There's one line, all right, that I'm not afraid to say on the air. Okay, I mean, disclaimer: this podcast is not PC. All right. There's one line where they're at the Mondo Burger. Yeah, there's Good Burger, and then there's Mondo Burger across the street. And Dexter is about to start working at Mondo Burger. And then it's like Kurt is introducing himself. He's like, something, like, you can forget about your friends. You can forget about your family. Because Kurt is now both your mother and your father. And then Dexter, who's played by Kenan Thompson, main character, he kind of whispers to one of the other employees, Kurt must look freakishly strange naked. Which I feel like might have been like a transgender joke. Like, it worked 26 years ago. Okay. Hell, it would have worked 25 years ago, 1998, I mean. So I think, that line is why I think Good Burger is a classic, if not a cult classic. But I consider it a classic, even though it's slightly before my time. I was not. At the time that movie came out. It was 1997. A lot of those jokes are probably, some of them were time period specific, and not to go on a whole PC cancel culture rant or anything, but I am just wondering, with the upcoming Good Burger 2 this fall, and I will do my best to watch it when it comes out and hopefully get Paramount Plus out here. Hopefully. Good Burger 2, bringing back the original cast, Kenan Thompson, Kel Mitchell. Everybody's older now, so, but bringing them back and deciding to do a sequel, I think it's going to be good. I just don't think it's going to hold a candle to the original. And I had kind of weighed in. I don't remember which Instagram account it was, but I actually saw the trailer for it the trailer for Good Burger 2. I saw it on Instagram. I put in the comments how I felt as if Good Burger 2 will be to the original Good Burger what Coming to America 2 was to the original Coming to America. It's like, you see, Coming to America, it's my mom's favorite movie. All right. And, hi, Mom, if you're listening. It's my mom's favorite movie. I think I have that movie on DVD. I remember watching it when I was maybe 13, 14 years old. That movie is, and that movie came out 1986, I want to say. So, that movie's actually before my time. And yeah, that movie's, time period specific. And I think there was a time when comedy was more it was nuanced, and it was more kind of implicit. It was implied. You didn't have to specify everything. I saw with the first Coming to America, it's clearly the pastor is a misogynist. Clearly the pastor of the church is a misogynist. But in 1986, 1980, whatever year the movie came out, feel free to, fact check me. It was more implied. It was implied that yes, it was implied that yes, the pastor of the church is a bit of a chauvinist, a bit of a misogynist. It was implied. It wasn't something that was explicitly stated. It wasn't something that was stated. It's the pastor's a misogynist, and that's not something that was explicitly stated ever in the movie. I also feel at that time there was more of a, if you didn't like something, if you didn't like a certain movie, a certain joke, a certain actor, turn it off. It was that simple. Turn off the movie, go watch something else. And maybe that's due to the fact that 40 years ago, there was no internet. All right. There was no internet. There was no real podcasting. All right. There was no social media, wasn't a thing. So yeah, social media probably wasn't even a thought yet. All right. 1983. So I think comedy back then was more implicit. It was more nuance. If you got it, great. If you didn't, that's all right too. If you liked it, great. If you didn't, that's okay. Go do something else. There was none of this whole go rant about it online. It's go rant about it online and hope that the higher ups who made this movie are gonna look at your one specific tweet. You got to understand, the people at the top, they don't care about you. They don't care about us. All right. They're still making money. But yeah, and then I think that Coming to America 2, although I enjoyed it, it did not hold a candle to the first one. And I don't really have that nostalgia for the first one like Gen Xers would, like my parents would, who, were alive when the first one came out and, watched it then. But even as someone who was not alive when the first one came out, and I was alive for the second one, I still don't think that the second one held a candle to the first one. Well, it's not that I don't think, it's just, it didn't. All right. It didn't. Okay. Coming to America 2 is not Coming to America 1. All right. And Coming to America 2 is it was very like more filtered, more PC. And like, that's my worry with Good Burger 2. I just have a feeling that Good Burger 2, it's not going to be the same as Good Burger 1. Everybody's older. Okay. It's been over a quarter of a century. All right. Let that sink in. It's been over a quarter of a century since the first Good Burger came out. Again, like I said, the first Good Burger, 1997. That was 26 years ago. Quarter of a century is 25 years. It's been more than that. All right. Everybody's older now. Especially with the recent controversy with Dan Schneider. Dan Schneider, that man was a pedophile. He was a monster. Jeanette McCurdy, claims that he, pressured her into drinking alcohol when she was still underage. And, really, Dan Schneider, he did a bunch of really awful, really horrific things that I'm not even going to get into on this podcast because it's too much to process mentally and emotionally. But he also was like the main guy at Nickelodeon for a long time. Like in the 90s, 2000s, a lot of the shows that I grew up with that I still watch the reruns of have his name attached to it. Like his name is attached to Zoe 101, iCarly, Victorious. I want to say Drake and Josh as well. He was in the first Good Burger. All right. And I'm still going to watch those shows. I'm still going to, go back and rewatch the first Good Burger. And I'm sure his name's not attached to the second Good Burger. He's been like fired by Nickelodeon. He hasn't been charged with anything, but Nickelodeon's cut all ties with this man. Thank God. So I think after that, it's like, that's like all the more reason why I do not see the Good Burger sequel living up to its predecessor. I just don't. Like it's just not gonna be as good. For those of us who, like myself, who are old enough to have at least watched the Good Burger movie when it came on television, I caught a little bit of like reruns of all that and Night Live. Kenan and Kel, which I like to think of Kenan and Kel as like the PG version of Key and Peele. It was like the kids version of like Key and Peele or Chappelle Show. Like, that was Kenan and Kel, and yeah, I mean the 90s seemed like a very fun time, especially for Nickelodeon, like the golden years of Nickelodeon and of Friday night cartoons and Saturday morning cartoons. But yeah, I just don't really think that Good Burger 2 is gonna live up to Good Burger 1. Huge fan of the first one, and gonna watch the second one, and I'm gonna go in without any real expectations. But I just have a feeling I'm gonna watch the second one, and my prediction now, all right, will come to pass. All right. So that's Good Burger 2. Before I started the stream, I was watching the trailer for the trailer for Rebel Moon. Now, Rebel Moon, I heard about this movie. This movie came up during Fantasy Movie League. Shout out to Comic Boys Podcast and the Fantasy Movie League for 2023. Now, Rebel Moon came up. the name of the movie came up back in January when we all drafted our picks. I can't remember if anybody picked Rebel Moon. I did not. But I've heard that it's going to be like similar to Star Wars, Zack Snyder, pretty much like Zack Snyder's like version of Star Wars. I did watch the trailer, and I got to say, the trailer, it looks pretty damn good. Looks pretty good. Zack Snyder, I'm not the biggest fan of him as a director. I mean, he did direct 300, which I've always said is a great movie, but it's very inaccurate. It's very historically inaccurate. So it's not a still an okay movie. Yeah, it's 300, Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, not an actual Batman vs Superman, not a real movie. And but his version of Justice League was good. I only wish that he had maybe divided it up into like part one, part two, I'm glad that it was on Max exclusively, like it's a Max original film, and there was the whole release the Snyder cut, that whole thing. I think they should have done it as like a limited series, part one, and then the credits roll, and like they shouldn't have done like 4-hour long movie. Like I've never watched that movie in one sitting. It's always taken me like 2 days to watch it. 2 days, that's like the quickest I've watched Zack Snyder's Justice League. So he's an okay film director. The movies, it's got like Jimon Hansu. It's got some familiar faces that you've seen in other projects. And my prediction is that it's not going to be total garbage. I mean, it looks like, science fiction, space battles. So I feel like there's probably going to be some similarities to Star Wars, some similarities maybe to Star Trek, which I've never really got into Star Trek, but yeah, it actually looks pretty promising, and it is a 2-part movie. Part one comes out, I think, December 22nd of this year, exclusively on Netflix. December 22nd of this year is part one. I forget what parts 1 and 2 are called, but I know part two comes out next year in April. So definitely look. So that's a movie looking ahead, looking forward to for next year, spring. So Rebel Moon. So Rebel Moon is now officially on my radar. I'm officially looking forward to watching Rebel Moon on Netflix, because it won't be in theaters. Netflix is the one streaming service that I have not had any trouble getting out here. So yeah, that is Rebel Moon. I'm actually excited for that. I was gonna say, like, it also kind of gave me Dune vibes as well. Although I didn't see Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2. We don't know when that's coming out. I think I heard that like Dune Part 2 had its release date pushed back or whatever. So yeah, it kind of gave me Dune vibes mixed with a bit of like Star Wars, and so yeah, check out the trailer for Rebel Moon. Let me know in the comments. Like, let me know what you guys thought of Rebel Moon as well. So, last thing I'll talk about. Last thing I will talk about before we end this this episode of Talk Time. Dance documentary, the Michael Jordan documentary. It's 10 episodes. I think I'm at episode 8 now. And it's an excellent documentary. It's probably one of my favorite documentaries. And I like how it talks about, and I remember when it came out 2020, like during COVID. And and I like how it talks about how Michael Jordan, he might have been like the face of the NBA for a while. For a while, he was the face of the NBA. He won 6 championships, six rings with the Bulls, and he was the leader of probably one of the greatest sports teams, one of the greatest franchises in the history of professional sports. And how he didn't do it on his own. Like he didn't he didn't he didn't do it. He had a whole organization behind him. He had Scottie Pippen as kind of like the Robin to his Batman. He had Dennis Rodman. He had, well, at least later on in his career, Steve Kerr. B.J. Armstrong, Tony Kukoc. And it was interesting about what I found interesting about Tony Kukoc was that Jerry Krause had like scouted out Kukoc back in like late 80s, and then 1990 Kukoc was going to be traded to the Bulls. Like he was going to get drafted to the Bulls in 1990. But then, bit of history, Yugoslavia, a country that does not exist today, Yugoslavia, 2 of its provinces, Croatia and like one other province, they had like separated. What was then Yugoslavia, and play basketball for another 2 years, and then he played on I think Team Croatia at the 1992 at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, and that was the first year that USA that was the first year that we had a Team USA at the Olympics was back in 1992. Yeah, so the dream team, you had Michael Jordan, you had Jordan, Pippen, Magic Johnson, a lot of really great, guys from that time period, a lot of heavy hitters from that era of basketball, and they had played against Kukoc. Played against Kukoc in I think the semifinals, like the semifinals game, and they really were just like attacking him. They were just beating up on him. But what they didn't know is that the fact that Kukoc and pretty much the people of Croatia, anybody who was playing ball, team Croatia, chances are they were playing ball during that Civil War. So they said how Team USA Tony Kukoc earned the respect of Team USA. Although Team USA did win the gold medal, they earned Kukoc's respect in that last game. He was resilient. He started kind of, fighting back and, scoring threes and, slam dunks. And so, yeah, that just goes to show, again, the resilience of when you've played ball during like the Cold War era, kind of like maybe like the end of the Cold War, and during a civil war essentially. So, and then Kukoc, he gets drafted to the Bulls, and 92 or either 92 or 93. I forget the exact year, but I know he was number 7, and he won a number of the championships with Michael. So really, the Last Dance documentary is about how nobody wins on their own. Nobody does it by themselves. You have Michael Jordan. He had a whole team behind him. He had a whole organization. Pippen, Rodman, Steve Kerr, Tony Kukoc, Horace Grant. He had all those guys plus a Hall of Fame coach, Phil Jackson. So everybody had to play their part. It was a group effort. Yes, Michael was maybe the face of it. He was maybe the leader of the team, but he might have been the leader of the team, but he did not win those championships by himself. No. And that's like there's the whole "I could be like Mike" campaign, and I don't want to get into like the biggest, of debates about like who's the GOAT and who's, who would win one-on-one. Because even, rest in peace, Kobe Bryant, Black Mamba, rest in power, I should say. He shows up on one of the episodes, and this interview with him must have been like maybe like a few months before his tragic death. And he said how like everything that he has, all the skills that he has, are as a result of Michael Jordan. How really MJ was his idol. The two of them, they played against each other in the All-Star game when I think he was only 9, and Kobe was only 19, and Jordan was, I guess, technically considered old at that time. I think maybe like 98, like the 1998 All-Star game. They played against each other. Classic, greatest of all time versus the greatest of that time, like the next, Kobe was supposed to be like the next Michael Jordan, like the next GOAT. So, yeah. But in that interview, one thing that struck me was when Kobe said, "I'm tired of hearing my fans ask, who would win? If it's you and MJ one-on-one, who would win?" Kobe, he said, it's not a competition. You see, everything that I have, and all the greatness that I have is from him. So he didn't specifically call out Michael Jordan as the greatest of all time or anything, but and even Kobe, he had help. So check out The Last Dance. It's a really, really great documentary for sports fans, for basketball fans. So yeah, check that out. Tune in to, well, not tune into. Watch Ahsoka on Disney Plus. New episodes Tuesdays, and don't forget to tune in to Talk Time with Morgan Cobbs. We're live on YouTube every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Chuk Standard Time. All right, 8 a.m. Chuk Standard Time every Sunday morning. We are here live on YouTube. I think that's about 6 o'clock p.m. Saturdays, East Coast time, Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Saturdays, Eastern Standard Time, 8 a.m. Sundays, Chuk Standard Time. We are live. We're talking about TV. We're talking about movies. We're talking about pop culture. We're talking about documentaries, trailers. So yeah. We're out here. Feel free to comment on any of these episodes. Post a comment like during the live stream, after the live stream. I'd love to hear from you guys. Don't forget to follow us on all social media, all those links. Check the show notes, to follow all of our social media, Instagram, TikTok, Letterboxd, subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on your post notifications because we go live every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Chuk Standard Time. That's all I got for this episode of Talk Time. Hope you guys enjoyed your stay here at Cobb's Corner. And as always, I will talk to all of you in the next episode. Peace.